Whoa! Hey everybody, it's Anna. Welcome back to my booktube channel where I knock over the stacks of books that I have secretly hidden over here. So today I am going to be doing kind of a personal challenge video. I thought about doing the mid-year book freakout tag, but then I decided I didn't really want to. And then I got an email from Goodreads that is their most popular books of 2022 so far. And because I'm curious, I clicked on it to see how many of them I've read. And it turns out not very much. So I wanted to kind of go through that list, see what it was all about, and share with you some of the books that are on that list that I have read or that I want to read, and some that I've never heard of. So just to give it a little bit of context, this is from the Goodreads website. It says, the listings below represent the books that have generated the most interest and enthusiasm from Goodreads members in the first half of the year. The editorial team measures this by tallying up reader reviews and watching how often a particular title is added to readers' want to read lists. We've also limited the selections to books that have a 3.5 star rating, 3.5 star or better average rating. And this was from 140 million members worldwide. So that's the context for it. So let's go ahead and go through these one by one. Okay, so first up we have fiction. I actually haven't read any of the ones on the fiction list. This number one, One Italian Summer, I have never even heard of this book. It sounds a little bit like a women's fiction sort of read. It's not really something that sounds super interesting to me. Black Cake, what is this? This is, like a modern inheritance puzzle. Hana Yanagihara, actually haven't read anything by them. Isabel Allende. That actually sounds cool. I probably want to read something by Isabel Allende. And then this other book, Olga Dies Dreaming, looks really interesting. I checked out the others. I didn't really have much interest in them. This is about Agatha Christie going missing. And then this is one of the ubiquitous World War II books where the person just mysteriously doesn't actually face the cover. Candy House by Jennifer Egan. Unsinkable Greta James. Memphis by Tara Stringfellow. I want to say I've read... No, it's a debut. Then where do I know this name from? Sure. These seem interesting enough. I already had Young Mungo on my list, which is about a Protestant and Catholic boy together growing up in a housing project. I think this may have been on Hannah's channel that I saw this, Hannah May. I'm not sure. So I haven't read any of those. Mystery and thriller, also haven't read any of those. That doesn't really surprise me too much, and I don't really have much interest in reading any of them right now, just not a genre I'm doing at the moment. Now, sci-fi and fantasy, the ubiquitous Sarah J. Maas, not interested. Number 2 was Book of Night by Holly Black, which I read, and I rated it 4 stars. I know this was kind of a controversial book on YouTube, and not a ton of people really enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it for what it was. Let's see. This cartographer's book looks really, really interesting. I'm going to add this to want to read because I think I already have it on my library hold list. How High We Go in the Dark. Interesting. Humanity Rebuilding. Okay. Kaiju Preservation Society. I actually just got in at the library, so I'll be reading that soon as part of this vlog. Electra's on the read list. Nettle and Bone. And then romance. I'm a little picky about these, but I have Weather Girl on my want to read list. Delilah Green Doesn't Care is the adult debut by Ashley Herring Blake. I actually own that, so I'll be reading that for this vlog. Young Adult Gallant, that was number 1, is the new V. Schwab. I gave that 3 out of 5. It wasn't really my favorite. It had some, I think, issues with tone and consistency throughout. But again, I think, it's fine for what it is, like a YA for younger YA readers. The new Casey McQuiston, definitely want to read. I have so many of these on my checkout list. I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys is about spies and informants during the communist regime in Romania. So I have this. I'll be reading it for the vlog. Same with A Magic Steeped in Poison. It's kind of a magical tea story. I really still want to read She Gets the Girl. I want to read Hotel Magnifique. These are on my library book list. All My Rage. Same. Sabaa Tahir is good. Nonfiction. I want to read these. Yes, definitely want to read Chuck Klosterman. I have Stolen Focus on my library hold list. How to Be Perfect. Oh, that's interesting. From the creator of The Good Place and the co-creator of Parks and Rec. Oh, see, that sounds really cool. I definitely want to read that. Betrayal of Anne Frank, a cold case investigation. Sure, I'll read that. The Power of Regret. A bunch of these, actually, I probably want to read because I have been on such a nonfiction kick lately, so I'm actually going to save these. I don't think I'm going to do Unmasked, though. I don't really read a ton of true crime. It just creeps me out way too much. Yeah, Landmark Sexual Assaults Investigation. No, thanks. I don't think so. Funny Farm, My Unexpected Life with 600 Rescue Animals is a memoir. That is just how it sounds. And I saw that on the library's new and on order list. So definitely going to check that out. Yeah, let's check this out. Let's see these. So I've actually read 2 books on this list of the most popular Goodreads books of the year so far. So if that doesn't tell you something about my reading tastes, I don't know what else will. So let's check back in here. So we've got Kaiju Preservation Society that's available at the library now. I'm going to go pick that up later today. And then I have my 1 romance and 2 YA books. I have I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys and A Magic Steeped in Poison by Judy I. Lin. Both of these were on the most popular YA books of the year so far. And Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake, which was on one of the most popular romance lists so far. So I'm going to probably start with reading one of the fiction books today because I'm in between fiction books at the moment, actually. I'm in between everything. I'm all caught up on everything I was currently reading. Wow, awesome. So I will check back in and let you know what I think of those. See you soon. Hello, everybody. We are dealing with delightful Pacific Northwest lighting yet again, but I am just checking in to say that I have finished reading I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys. This was a young adult kind of crossover book about a young student growing up during the Romanian Revolution that threw off their draconian dictator couple, the Ceausescus, and it is about this student named Christian who really just wants things to change, winds up getting recruited as an informer for the secret police while also trying to work as part of the revolution and the resistance to overthrow this oppressive regime. I thought that this was a really good book. This is a period of time in history I don't think that a lot of people really know about, and I think some of that might just be because there's still so much that even the people involved in Romania at the time don't have access to that information. You know, it's stuff that has been in archives that were sealed for, 15 years after the events that took place in 1989 during this overthrow even happened. And I thought that the book was really good. Sometimes the writing got a little bit repetitive, like there would be every chapter for a while there just ending with the main character saying, and if only I had known this other thing at the time, or I thought I was doing the right thing, but little did I know that I wasn't. So that got kind of tedious to read after a little bit, but also, I get it. This was a character who, is just trying his best as a very earnest teenager trying to do the right thing. I think the thing that impressed me the most about this book was the amount of research that Ruta Sepetys did to write it. She actually interviewed so many people who were involved in the events of this revolution. She even interviewed Nadia Comaneci, who defected to the U.S. shortly before the events of the book, and they actually mentioned that in the book about this. And I really hope that we see a lot more writing about, the youth movements that caused these revolutions to happen, sort of these, places that were behind the Iron Curtain, now not. This book was really good. I can see why it was on one of the most popular Goodreads books. I think I'm probably going to read a Magic Steeped in Poison or Poison Steeped in Magic. I'm probably going to be reading that next. So I will talk to you very soon. Hi, it is Thursday the 30th of June, and I have just started the audiobook of Bittersweet. What is the subtitle of this book? Bittersweet. How Sorrow and Longing Make Us Whole by Susan Kane. So this was one of the Goodreads nonfiction most popular books of the year, and I read Susan Kane's Quiet when it came out years ago. I think I must have been in high school when that book came out, and I liked it okay. This one so far, I've just finished the introduction on audiobook and started the first chapter. If you're interested, the author is also the audiobook reader, so I know some people like that. And so far, it definitely has a little bit more of that writing style to it, where it's kind of a business / self-help book that you can tell is going to be like required reading for a lot of corporate leadership in places. And the fact that it is required reading for them is not necessarily a bad thing, because at least in the introduction, she kind of sets up that these sort of negative quote unquote emotions of sadness and melancholia and stuff actually do serve a good purpose. And I think it's kind of putting itself forward as an antidote to this toxic positivity idea that we must always be happy and upbeat and positive all the time, and that other emotions don't have anything to offer us, which is ridiculous, because that's just not the way that the spate of human emotion works. But the reason why I kind of roll my eyes a little bit at this, as knowing that it's probably going to wind up being a corporate book, is that in the very beginning of the introduction, there's a quiz that you can take that gives you like a score to show how melancholic you are. So I did this because of course I did. It's me. It's a very unscientific quiz, and she's at least upfront with that. Like, she worked with some people who are cognitive scientists, but this is not in any way a scientific test. It's like useful for self-knowledge only. Unsurprisingly, I scored very high on the melancholic score. I scored an 8.2 out of 10, which means that I'm a true connoisseur of bittersweetness, the place where light and dark meet. I don't know. It's kind of interesting to me because there are some very broad sweeping claims that she makes in this, which is that people that have this higher tendency to absorption, like highly sensitive people, empaths, whatever you want to call it, whatever word you use to describe this type of person, they're apparently more likely to like be creative and be self-transcendent and more spiritual. And I don't know about that, mostly because I don't think that there's any one single indicator of creativity or creative thinking. I think that that's too complex of a thing to say that it's because you are in touch with these more negative emotions that you are more prone to being creative. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. It's also just kind of that pop psychology book writing of, oh, here's like a cool thing to make you feel better about yourself. I don't know. So I'm gonna keep listening to this. The audiobook is like 7 hours long, something like that, and I'll just check in with my thoughts.
Good morning. It is July 1st, and last night I finished listening to the second chapter of Bittersweet. It was mostly about this universal human experience of longing for finding more about one's place in the world, and that sort of thing. The author talked a lot about different mystical traditions and various religions, particularly Sufi Islam. And I think the consensus is just that this is a universal human experience, regardless of creed or culture, is that we all feel this sense of longing and incompleteness and this desire for wholeness and fulfillment, and how mystic movements in religions urge us to kind of embrace this as a part of life and as an essential part of understanding who we are. So that was the chapter. I'll see what happens next. I'm gonna probably listen to another chapter while I get ready for the day. Oh, also, last night I started reading Magic Steeped in Poison. Right now, it's very early days yet, but it is about a girl named Ning whose mother was a tea ceremony person, but like tea is also kind of magical in this. It seems like the tea ceremony in here, and I know that the author is Chinese, but from what I understand is heavily based off of both Chinese folklore and myth, but also traditional Chinese medicine, which I don't really know that much about. But there's some stuff in the back of the book. So yeah, Ning's mother is somebody who is like this master tea ceremony person, and she has to go to the capital city because her mother has died and her sister has been poisoned. They've both been poisoned by this tea that is circulating in the market, and so Ning has to go to the capital city and compete to become the next like royal tea maker so that she can get a favor to save her sister. I'm really early on in the book. That's literally all that has happened. So I'll check back in when I've read a little bit more and let you know.
So I finished listening to the next chapter of Bittersweet, and I'm honestly not too sure at this point if this book is for me. This next chapter was about creativity coming from our sort of sad moments, and she talks a lot about Leonard Cohen in this, and about how much she loves Leonard Cohen and how his music is all about this balance and this dialectic between the dark and the light. But that's not even the problem that I have with this book. The problem I have with this book is it's kind of all over the place in terms of anecdotal stuff, personal data, a bunch of, I don't really know what the term for this is, where you just like cite a random research study and then you just drop it and run. But that's been happening a lot in this book, especially in this chapter. And I'm always a little bit weary or wary, both I suppose, of books that discuss this sort of myth of the tortured artist, where like people that have mood disorders or people that are more sad or more prone to depression, anxiety, that sort of thing, make their great artworks because of their mental illness. And while this book does like eventually state that, you know, they don't think that that is the case and that people that are clinically depressed are not producing their best creative work, it is still kind of, to me, romanticizing sadness more than I think it needs to. Like, I think there's a way to write that you are able to make, like, I think there's a way that you can write that you make good things out of bad stuff that happens to you without making it seem like that's the goal, right? Like, sometimes bad things happen to you and the goal is not, let me just make the most creative thing possible so that something good can come out of this, right? Like, I think that it's tempting to see that as a progressive narrative of cause and effect, where we move from a worse place to a better one, and I get why that's enticing. But just like life and healing and creativity and whatnot is not linear like that. So I don't know how much I'm going to keep enjoying this book. Hello, I am filming this from a park near my house because I decided to go for a walk, took the complete wrong turn direction, and added a bunch of miles to this walk by mistake. So I'm taking a break because it's very hot and I found a nice little grassy area to sit down upon. And I thought I would fill you in a little bit on some of the books that I've been reading, the popular on Goodreads books. So my parents actually came to visit this last week. We did a lot of reading together. Most of what I did was not the popular books, though. I finished those. Let's go ahead and start first with the audiobook, which was Bittersweet, How Sorrow and Longing Makes Us Whole by Susan Kane. I'm really not sure who this book was for. This was a book that was supposedly about, you know, how sorrow and longing makes us whole, but it really just read a lot more like a series of kind of poorly curated essays. So she talks a little bit about her own love of Leonard Cohen and how she likes listening to sad music, and then right after that goes to how talking about your sort of negative feelings in the workplace increases your productivity and frankly your profitability. And I just thought that there was nothing really new or interesting to say in this book. I mean, you could boil it all down to sadness and sorrow and loss are just a part of life, but I think we all know that, and this book didn't really add anything interesting or informative or good to the situation. I feel like maybe this book was designed to be purchased by people who are probably in management positions who want their employees to read this book. There's a test that you can take to classify yourself, and at the end of the day, I really just think that this exists in that weird space between business books and self-help that are really only designed to have managers make you read the book for work and then decide, you know, if it increases their bottom line or not. And I just didn't care for it. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars, but I honestly don't really know that I could recommend this, especially because I don't know that I could say who it was for. You're really just better off reading any of the other philosophers that she cites if you want to read about this. So then I also finished reading A Magic Steeped in Poison by Julie Lin. This is the first in a young adult fantasy duology. Didn't realize it was a duology until the book itself ended on a cliffhanger. But it's about this girl called Ning whose mother and sister have recently drunk poison tea. In this world, tea and the brewing of tea and the ceremony of tea is like a magical thing. It really does cause like supernatural effects in the world, whether it is reanimation of like dead creatures or giving people extraordinary physical abilities. And Ning's mother was an expert at the brewing and art of tea, so to have her die and her sister sicken after drinking this poisoned tea, Ning is understandably very upset. She wants to go enter in this competition to become the latest like tea brewer in chief at the royal palace, but she kind of finds herself swept up in a lot of court and political intrigue, even as she's trying to do her best in the competition to honor her mother's legacy and to save her sister. I thought this book was just okay. I think partially that is because I'm just getting like too old for a lot of YA stories to really hold my interest and my attention, but I really do think that like if you have a young adult in your life that is interested in tea magic and this type of thing, that you would really enjoy recommending it to that person. I just think that like I'm not really the target audience for it anymore, but I really appreciated it for what it was. I understand that Julie Lim based some of the magic system off of traditional Chinese medicine and the type of things that that the herbs and medicines and things have represented in that historically, and that's something I don't know a lot about, so I have to do more reading on that. And it's a little bit mentioned in the back of the book. So it was good. I don't know if I'll pick up the second one, but I would recommend it if the premise sounds interesting to you. And then I also read The Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi, which is basically an adult sci-fi popcorn movie about a guy that loses his job right before the coronavirus pandemic hits, and then he gets hired to work for this mysterious preservation society that goes to a world. It's like an extra parallel universe world where kaiju live, and the barrier between our world and theirs is affected by nuclear energy. So it's definitely got shades of like original Godzilla, Jurassic Park, Pacific Rim. It's just a geeky, nerdy, irreverent homage to all of those pop cultural things. And I just thought that it was fun. This is the like reading equivalent of a popcorn movie. I think I read it in like a day. And John Scalzi, this was my first John Scalzi that I've ever read, so it doesn't really seem representative from what I know of his work, but I had fun with it. All of these books, for their various reasons, I gave 3 out of 5 stars. I think that means that the last book that I have on my TBR for this project, Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake, that's an adult romance. I'm waiting until a little bit later in this month to read it because I already went on a romance kick last month and I need to mix it up a little bit. Hi, airplane. So I will check back in with you when I have more. Hey everybody, it's Anna. It's July 25th and I have finally finished the last book on my TBR for the Goodreads Most Popular Books of the first half of the year, and that was Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This is an adult romance novel. This is actually the author's first adult and romance book that is advertised as a rom-com where this woman who is queer, it's a sapphic romance, comes back to her small town for her stepsister's wedding. She gets hired as the photographer for the wedding. She's not in the wedding because she and her family don't really get along for a variety of reasons. And all of the bridesmaids are her sister's friends from high school who did not treat Delilah necessarily the best during that time. along the way, she starts falling for Claire, who is one of the bridesmaids who stayed in the small town, has a kid, has a bookstore that she runs. And so it's kind of about the two of them falling in love, kind of trying to repair that initial relationship that they all had when they were in high school and, you know, less, I guess, emotionally mature and kind of able to deal with the difficult circumstances going on in their lives. I had a lot of really mixed feelings about this book. I'd say that I really enjoyed probably about the first half of it. I don't always like it now when romance books are advertised as rom-coms, because I think that's a very specific thing and not every romance is a rom-com. But the first half of this did have a lot of strong like rom-com elements. I could see that like translating very well to it. But then later on in the second half of the book, it becomes pretty clear that the stepsister Astrid and her fiance are just like not right for each other. He's a terrible person. He goes behind her back and like makes all of these important life decisions without consulting her or even saying anything about it. And he's just very dismissive and disrespectful. So it becomes clear to the bridesmaids and then eventually to Delilah that they need to do something about this. They can't let Astrid go through with the wedding. And I just need to stop right here because I get that it's to make tension for the book itself, but if your best friend is going to marry somebody and you think that this is like a giant red flag in their relationship and you're their bridesmaids, it's your job to tell your best friend, hey, your fiance sucks. We need to talk about this. Are you happy because you don't seem happy? This person is belittling you. This person is demeaning you. And there are all of these shenanigans that have to happen in the second half of the book because the characters come up with yet more like elaborate schemes to tell Astrid that she shouldn't be marrying her fiance when in fact they could have just sat down and had some of these character building moments by having it as a normal conversation and then save some of the rom-com stuff more for the romance. So I actually felt really bad for Astrid because she was actually trying her best to do what she could with what she had. She was really getting it from all sides with, you know, the difficulty with her friends, her relationship with her stepsister not being great. Her mom was a real piece of work and her fiance wasn't great either. And nobody was like telling her, hey, do some of this for yourself. If you're not happy with this person, don't get married. And the other thing that really bothered me is that, like I said, there could have been some really good opportunities to have that character growth happen outside of these elaborate schemes to tell Astrid. But instead, a lot of the character development was very wedged into something that, while not quite a deus ex machina at the very end, felt like it read far too easily an explanation and a way of getting through all of the like interpersonal difficulties that all of the characters had. I really did not like this reveal. I thought that it just wrapped everything up too neatly and too quickly. And also there were things tied up in that reveal that I felt was further a betrayal of Astrid's trust of everybody. So honestly, I just really felt for Astrid. I know the second book in the series is going to be her book. I really can't wait to read it because I thought that she was actually a better character than her sister Delilah, who is the main character of this book. All throughout this book, we're taught that like Delilah has to sort of close off her heart, close off her emotions. She's been wounded. You know, her father and mother died when she was very young, leaving her with this stepmother who's very emotionally cold and distant and unsupportive. And the stepmother is like always pitting Delilah against Astrid, her biological daughter, and, you know, making it worse for both of them, but always comparing Delilah unfavorably. So Delilah's understandably upset by this and understandably like makes kind of catty decisions in the way that she treats people, but I understand where she's coming from. However, it's been a while since I read a romance story with a protagonist that was just so unlikable. There was so much stuff that happened in this book where I was just like, I do not understand why Claire, the love interest, is falling for her at all. There are some very big, like, misunderstandings and miscommunications about things just as fundamental as, is this a casual relationship or not? There are a lot of assumptions that go into whether this is casual, whether this is just for sex, how this is related to, you know, both of them meeting again as grown queer women And this contained another one of my least favorite things that I've now encountered in a couple of romances, which is the characters falling in love, but really they live like 3,000 miles away from each other. And it's like, you're never going to see this person after this event is over. And then the book has to bend over backwards to find ways to make that work because, of course, the romance is going to end with an HEA HFN. So I did not really care for this book. There were some characters that I really liked, some parts of it that I really liked, but I wound up ultimately giving it 3 out of 5 stars because I just think that a lot of the character development was handled not very well, either too quickly or just not addressed at all. That being said, I am going to read the second book in the series, which is Astrid, what is it called? Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail. And then I believe that the third book is called Iris, whatever her last name is, Doesn't Date. And so that's the story of another one of the bridesmaids that is not Claire, the love interest from this book. So, overall, what was my experience like reading the most popular Goodreads books from this year? I mean, it was fine. I read the books that were on that list that I either already had or already had from the library and that I wanted to read, but I just found a lot of them to be very underwhelming. You know, they were a bunch of 3-star reads, and I guess, I don't know if that's just because that's the average rating I give to books that are more popular, or if it was just kind of a bad luck of the draw. But anyways, that was my experience doing that. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to support me, the best way to do that here, honestly, is to hit the subscribe button. That way, it helps the channel grow, it helps more people find my videos, and also you get notified whenever I post a new one, which is now back up to a couple times a month. I think that's pretty respectable. Some people have asked me if there's a way to support me and the content that I make financially on the internet, and the answer to that is yes. I do have a Patreon down below for the business that I run with my friend Colin. We make tabletop games together, so I will link that Patreon as well as the digital store where we sell our games. If you would like to support me financially, that is the best way to do it because that business is part of how I make my money and how I'm able to continue with the creative writing work and stuff that I do. So if you decide to support that, that would be very nice of you, thanks, but there is absolutely no pressure to do so whatsoever, and I'm still going to be making stuff here on YouTube for free. So as always, thank you all so very much for watching. I will see you in the next one. Happy reading. Bye.